I can't hear anything.
You said that. I thought I had lost my hearing.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So, looks like I have to, that's weird. Okay. All I had to do was, unplug and plug it back in.
Oh.
All right, I'm gonna have to start over then.
Good. I'm glad I wasn't the only one. Couldn't hear you.
All right. That's funny. All right, we'll start over again. All right, good morning, everybody. We're rebooting the whole release training sequence. So we're going to be talking about Unisight, Uniscope today. Uh, for those of you who didn't get the memo, Unisight and Uniscope is a rebranded product that were released, uh, which used to be known as Global ES and Passport ES. Unisight, which still has the Advisor, Sentry, and Guardian components in it. Those names have not changed. You guys can continue to use those. Customers are already familiar with them and they're comfortable with that. Just know that when we say Unisight externally, we mean what we used to call Global ES, and when we say Uniscope, it means Passport ES. Unisight, so obviously, is solutions that's marketed for global deployments, and of course, Uniscope is regional specific solutions for China, Europe, Brazil, and US for now. Other rebranding as well on other products that Systech currently has. eFingerprint is called Unisecure. Citadel was released under Unitrace. And lastly, Turnkey Solutions is called Unisolve, right? Let me go over the key differences in 8.0. First things first, its biggest difference is operating system and new SQL Server support. Unisight Guardian, we added support for Windows Server 2012. We still support all the other Windows, including 2003 and 2008. This is just an addition. We also added support for SQL Server 2012 and SQL Server 2014. And because Microsoft has already went ahead and deprecated support for SQL Server 2005, we've also done the same. So for Guardian, if you try to install it, install 8.0 on a system with SQL Server 2005, it will not let you. Unisight and Uniscope, Advisor Sentry client applications, has been switched over to support Windows 7 embedded, and this actually was the big push. We had a lot of IT policies from different pharmas that was having difficulties allowing anything other than Windows 7 systems on their network. So that was one of the driving factors for 8.0. And internally, we also use SQL Server Express. For those of you guys that know, we updated that to run Windows SQL Server 2012 Express instead of 2008, which is what we were using. And the third bullet point, which is kind of important, going into 8.0 and onward, we will no longer support Windows XP embedded. So everything from here on in, if a customer wants to take advantage of any new features that may be coming out in 8.0 and above, you cannot run that on your current Windows XP systems. And we'll talk more about that later. And really the one key feature that we added, it was supposed to be a very minimal release, which just had support for different OSs and SQL Server. But the one key feature that we added was what we call remote focus, also known as enhanced pack by layer. Those of you may have seen it already. We have deployed it in two different regions pre 8.0. Those guys, I believe it was Merck and Amgen. They really beta tested the solutions with us and actually have it running on their site right now. The main reason for it, we currently have a 29 megapixel camera with a 85 millimeter lens that we usually deploy on our manual pack station. But because we need to get enough field of depth, we close down the aperture, and we use a sort of optical trick to gain enough depth of field so that we can look through multiple layers. But closing down the aperture down to like f8 usually also hits the quality of the actual code that's being read. So what the new solution using remote focus allows you to do is we actually have a 85 millimeter autofocusing lens that's mounted onto the 29 megapixel camera, and it allows us to use an aperture that's slightly wider. And when we actually focus right onto the plane of where the layer inspection is occurring, we can now read a lot cleaner image. Currently, it reads all the way down to 0.4 millimeter module size, which is the European standard for 2D matrices. And we can actually read even lower than that at times, depending on the print quality. Right. What we used to support before was a 0.6 millimeter module size, and that had to be laser printed. Last thing, driver pack 22 went out with 8.0. Those of you know, driver packs have their own release cycle, but we usually try to release something when we have a GA release as well. So 22 went out, and I'll talk briefly about this a little bit later, but we updated a bunch of web drivers to use communications that's available in Windows 7. And another big change, which you guys just need to know about, but on the XP systems, our C drive was the TIPS drive, and our OS drive, including where the Windows was installed and any other things like Kepware, was installed to the D drive. Going into 8.0, it is now backwards. We had to flip it. There were some boot sequences that kept on resetting the D drive back to C drive, and they were flipping. All of our devs, took turns trying to figure out, exactly how to keep it the same. But it looks like when we deploy a Windows standard 7 embedded version, there's a specific step that puts the OS drive to C drive. So the system drive is under C, and the TIPS is now installed on the D drive. So just keep that in mind. All right. The compatibility matrix is just an updated copy. The pattern still remains the same. We support Guardian 8.0 all the way down to Advisor 732. Technically, I gotta stress the fact that yes, it is backward compatible. The lots will start, but there are features within the lot, something like suspend and resume. If you guys are using it, those features will not be available, and chances are it may cause errors. So depending on what you're actually using, it may or may not work. But once you get to a more recent base, something like 735.101, then yes, you can fully use it with Unisite 8.0 releases. The upgrade options for 8.0. So we have a lot of customers that are already on our current IPCs, IPC2 to be exact, and they are looking to do an upgrade. So what do? We actually have a fact page, frequently asked questions on SharePoint, so I'll point to that page right after I go over this. But we really have two approaches that we are currently supporting. The first approach, which is our recommended approach, customer buys a spare IPC from us, and when they do, it'll go out with a Windows 7 image on it. And what they'll do is they'll take it onto site, match up the IP numbers, join it to the domain, whatever they need to do to replicate all the settings of the current deployed system they got installed out on the field. They'll swap it, and then they'll do a validation or whatever their qualification runs are. Once it's all good, then they can validate the system and ghost it as a backup They could use that backup to even put it back onto the old system. So now they have two completely cloned spares that they could go back to anytime they want. All right, so that's option number one. The second option is just half of what I just mentioned, which is just ghosting the current system with a new image. So Systech will provide a ghost image, not the actual software, but just the ghost file, and customers can restore it right onto their IPC that they have on their current site. It's obviously more risky. You are writing directly and backing up directly from that drive. If something should go wrong, there's really no way to recover it. So this is to be proceeded with caution, right? And I will talk about that in a bit, but we also have a different upgrade process for um, joining the domain on a Windows 7 system because of the security differences in Windows. But let me go back. All right. So what I'm going to do now is take you guys over to the SharePoint site. On it, hopefully you guys are already familiar with this. There's a slew of good information here, but what we just talked about, the upgrade options checklist, is right here. So it's under, when you're going to SharePoint, under important alerts, there is a Unisite 8.0 upgrade options and checklist. The first things that come up top is the actual upgrade option that I covered. And then I have a whole list of guidelines that you could check through and read through. It basically says, if you have a specific system, what do we do? So you can just go right down the list. So number one is the customer running a 6X software, right? And if they are, legacy systems are not supported. Anything that's running on 6X or any hardware platform that's on a MX, ISX, and CX are not supported. So they will need to get a quote of full hardware upgrade along with the software. And here are the actual part numbers for the Windows 7 upgrades. There is a part number for just the OS upgrade, which is $500 for people that are not under our current service contract. The ones that are on the maintenance plan, then it's obviously free of charge. Kepware 4, if anybody has Kepware 4 running, the Windows 7 version and 8.0 will not work with it. So they will have to use Kepware 5, which means they'll be buying an upgrade. The billable customers will be $14.91.75. The non-billable will be free. IPC1 and IPC2. This really pertains to all the older, and when I say older, I mean right when we launched IPC1s for about a year, we allowed system configurations that had less than 4 gigs of RAM. So for those they do, and CCTS should be able to track down exactly how much RAM that they had using the serial number of the IPC, they will need to upgrade it so that it has 4 gigs of RAM, right? So the upgrade kit is $100. Just make sure that you guys actually do the research when looking at their IPC1 configuration. If there is a mix of E-Series and X-Series technology on the line, again, X-Series cannot be upgraded, so you would have to quote and change one of the X-Series at least to be on the same hardware platform so that everybody is running on 8.0. What if there is a customer-specific software that they run in their own IT policy, like antivirus, network drivers, VNC, and so on and so forth? Anything that's outside of the Windows and our current software, Unisite 8.0 or Uniscope 8.0, everything else is under the customer domain. Systech can certainly assist them in putting a software on there, but we generally won't be responsible for doing something like that, right? So anything that customers installed out of our service agreement, they can still do just with the caveats of if it's a virus checker, make sure they understand our white paper. It may have some performance issues. If it's continuously scanning, if it's a network monitoring tool or our backup tool that they're loading on, we certainly will support it, but the responsibility is on them. And if anything should go wrong, that's probably one of the first things that we're gonna tell the customer to remove it before troubleshooting the system. Um, is this a customer provided hardware platform? If customer wants to run it on their, let's say, client applications or post.re workstation, which we currently support right now on the XP deployments, yes, they can still do that, but they need to run it under their Windows 7 license, which probably the computer already came with. There's actually a catch to this. I'll add it under here right now. (32-bit) OS only. So we'll talk more about this later. I just need a reminder. Right now, Windows 7 support is only for 32-bit. We did not open it up for 64-bit support yet. Reason being, our Vision library is programmed originally in 32-bit only. Actually, trying to make it work with both is it'll require recoding of a lot of our main components, so we held that for now. So going into the frequently asked questions. So these are so far the questions that I got, and right after this, I will open it up for other questions so that if anything should come up, I can add them right into this. DAP22, as I said, it was released with Unisite Uniscope 8.0. All of the drivers that use common serial controls have been updated to use what's under Windows 7, which also works with Windows XP. So we didn't break any of the XP stuff. It's just that we updated it so that it also works with Windows 7. The machines and the printers that we have access to, we obviously tested it. Any other printers that have not been should also work. I see a minimal risk there, but if it's a web driver specifically, and you guys are deploying it for the first time, just have a field verification email ready. When it does work, just give us a field verification back, and I'll list the actual web drivers here so that people know exactly which one I'm talking about. And that'll help QA check off that things that they couldn't test in here has worked out on the field, and we can qualify it as a field verification. What are the main differences in 8.0? I've already went over this. I will skip this for now. Another upgrade procedure. This is important. Can you restore past archives into 8.0? The answer is yes and no. Yes, that you can. 8.0 is designed to take archives from a 740 system. So if you have a 736 archive, let's say for example, all you would have to do is restore the 736 archive onto a 740 system first, then making a re-archive of that will become 8.0 compatible. So you just have to bring whatever baseline you have up to a 740 archive, and once you do, it becomes restorable, if you will, on version 8.0, right? The customers that already have 740s running on it, this is a no-brainer. They can just do it themselves. If there are customers that do not have it, I've already spoken to CCTS or even the project team. I guess you guys could do it too. All you have to do is just load it on a virtual, then make the backup, and that archive will be ready to go on 8.0. Keep that in mind. If a customer gets a spare unit with Windows 7 loaded on it, what do they do with the system that they pulled off on the line, right? I already went over this. They can, once everything works, they can actually clone that to the system that they pulled off so that they have an exact spare. The reason why we're recommending that customers go and buy a spare IPC, we went through the same thing when we had our ISXs. When we eventually stopped sourcing ISXs and customers are still running them years later, when the system actually went away completely, we didn't have a backup thing to source them anymore. So this actually gives them a physical hardware spare that they can fall back onto, years later. Pharmas don't generally switch out anything unless, it completely dies out. So they're going to try to keep it on life support as long as they can. Will all IPC ones always require a RAM upgrade? Yes, the default amount was 1 gig back when we released it. But because we also had an upgrade kit where people could install additional RAM, you really need to check with CCTS to see how much RAM that they're running. What is the customer responsible for during the upgrade? Again, everything outside of Systech software and configuration. So for us, it's the Windows which will already come with if you buy the spare system from here, or the Ghost if we are doing it out on site. Then the actual Systech software, which is Unisite Uniscope 8.0, the configuration of it, which will just be the archive. If it's an old project, if it's a new project, it'll still be an archive that we provided from within the house. Everything else, the IP address, joining the computer to the domain, anything that requires the IT folks to actually get access to the network, that's still all on them. So they may have to actually repeat a few steps when they upgrade to this IPC. So just keep that in mind. So I did cover it here. So the client application / post rework, can it run on a customer provided laptop with the retail version of Windows 7? Answer is yes. It can run on only 32-bit version of Windows 7 retail. We may make it compatible with 8.1 and onward, but right now that's just in planning phase. We have not deployed it. All right. So with all that said, I am going to unmute all of you guys for questions. All right. First things first, I see Andy had a question on the chat. So can you give us a simple explanation of why we only support Windows 7? And good question. Okay, so Andy's question was, why did we switch to Windows 7 embedded and just completely deprecated support for Windows XP embedded? There's a huge security difference between 7 and XP. And to my count, we have about 250 modules, exe executables, and DLL files that make up Unisite. They're in one way or another affected by a OS platform change. Trying to branch the code base to support both OSs is a nightmare. We did the same thing when we went from Windows NT to Windows XP. It just becomes a lot harder to maintain. So for us to go with the flow, going from Windows 7 to 8 might not be that bad, but because XP and 7 are vastly different, we had to make a decision on exactly what we'll do, and we said, all right, we'll just deprecate Windows XP entirely. And the other big reason is Windows XP is not even supported by Microsoft anymore. The support ended 2014. We get lucky because we have our technical OS name on IPCs is Windows 2009 standard embedded, right? So that's a different suite coming out of Microsoft. That is supported till January of 2019. But nonetheless, Microsoft will eventually close out this entire embedded suite. So there really was no need for us to keeping it supported. That's all. Are there any other questions on chat? Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions who are on the line? No, nobody. All right. With that said, I'm gonna jump into the actual release note portion. Um, and it seems like it's pretty quiet here, so let me stop the recording. All right. So going into the actual release notes themselves. It's too big. I will go over the Guardian first because this is a lot shorter list. Then I will go over the advisor portion. Yeah, right. So clearly, I'm gonna skip over the ones that we've already talked about. Support for SQL Server 2012 and 2014. Yes, we already went over that. Support for remote focus for pack by layer was added. This is all just a database change. There's no real user configuration yet that I've gone over. This actually went out as a bug fix. We've included it into the GA release. We have a feature called not included in notification. Let me see if I can pull it up here. So under our products, under any packaging levels, if you were to choose one, we have this little feature called not included in notification. What this allows you to do is actually skip over a specific packaging hierarchy when you do your notification to SAP or EPCIS. We had instances where GS1 SCR decommissioning schemas, so that feature was only meant for commissioning and aggregation schemas, but we had a customer complaint that they also wanted it available for decommissioning schemas, so we went ahead and enabled that feature. Another enhancement, we have a feature called pre-process. If a customer ERP system is sending us a list of serial numbers, we can provide a build rule or format rule that basically says, take this company prefix, add it with this serial number, and make a SSCC 18 out of it. Most of our customers are giving us the serial number with the check digit on it. Some were not. So it allowed this feature, putting a zero tilde allows us to actually put the calculated check digit at the end of a fully formed SSCC 18. Right. Right. Currently, it's only being used by Takeda. Another feature, GS1 SCR's notification using top-level notification buffer. All right. This is for U.S. regulations and specifically for any serialization without aggregation. If they were doing parent-level notification, because there were no aggregation, this is what ended up happening. Let's say if you had bottle case going into a pallet and your Guardian was configured to send notification on a pallet commission. On the first pallet, it was sending the pallet that just got commissioned plus any of the cases that were commissioned prior and any of the bottles that were commissioned prior. When the second pallet got commissioned, it went through the exact same steps. So on the second pallet commissioning, because there's no aggregation, it just took all of the cases that were commissioned, including the ones that were in pallet 1, and all of the bottles that were commissioned, including the ones that were in pallet 1. So cases and bottles kept on getting repeated. Really and ideally, the notification buffer type should be completed lot. So you do it once when the lot is ended. We had some customers that had to or wanted to get a bit more live data on their current pallet commissioning process so that they could stock up their inventory, the way they needed to. So we fixed it to report. So we are collecting aggregate data, but we're not reporting it. So we changed this so that it only generates commissioning data for that specific top parent. Another old bug, which has been already patched in a different hotfix a long time ago. We just added it, but added it to this GA. If your URL for notification server inside your notification rule was too long, I think it was like over 200 characters, it'll only allow you to save it once. If you try to alter that record, it wouldn't let you save again. We fixed the bug so that it allows you to save long URLs. This came out on a couple customer sites. There is a SQL Server user. There's also a Windows Group user. Once you go inside the SQL Server, you have different security permissions and roles that you could set. And a customer found out a specific way to not make some of the installation steps work. If you belong to a Windows group but not into a specific SQL Server role, then some of the upgrade process or installation process failed. We just went ahead and made it so that if it's enabled on one, it'll just make it work. Another new feature added pack by layer style and pack by layer child height to master data tag. These are two tags that gets referenced in the master data XML, which supports the remote focus efforts. So we can go over that a little later, but pack by layer style and pack by layer child height. Child height is basically the layer height for whatever product we're inspecting. This is just like the old pack by layer. This is configured at the Guardian level. Before this, it used to be length, width, height, and the actual number of rows and columns in Guardian. We've gotten rid of all that, and we're now just giving the child height and then just the pack style, which is just a free-form text that the customer can define, something like 12 by 19, 8 by 7, 8 by 7 US, so to speak. A suspend and resume bug, which was found in 740, we fixed it in 8.0 so that it's right out of the box. But we had a specific column name tag. It didn't get updated on one of the advisors, so we fixed it so that this error doesn't happen anymore during resume. Guardian SPT config, which I had open. You guys probably already noticed. It's been rebranded to a Unisite. You'll see that there's a new logo as well, new icons. I think the About page was also updated. Yeah, so let's keep that in mind. It's been rebranded. Master data editing capability, as well as master data itself, are both enabled in 8.0 and onward. So we as a business made a decision that we are going to keep it enabled. So when you install for the first time, you'll actually see master data stuff pre-enabled, as well as the other feature that was only by special request on the manufacturers is allowing the edit of master data within that system. You still get the really long error, really long prompt that comes up that says, all right, you're about to change master data products. Are you sure you want to do that? But keep that in mind, we are now allowing it out of the box. Added pack by layer options to pack style. It's the same exact thing that we changed in the database. And the last thing, we now disallow non-numeric characters in company prefix under manufacturers. This number actually doesn't get used anywhere other than when we do advanced calculations. And even then, we're only using to see what the length of the company prefix is. Once we know the length, we can do the calculation. Because we don't do anything else with it, customers thought they could just put whatever they want. So, more than once they were putting in anything they felt like it, and when we were doing some internal calculation, it was failing, and we found out it was tied to this. So we now at least mark it down to a numeric SG10 for company prefix, depending on your partition size. It could be 2 characters to like 11 characters or something like that. So we can't lock it down to a specific character length, but we are now making it just numeric. Let me unmute everybody, and you guys let me know if... All right, you guys are all muted. Are there any questions? Let me look at my little chat box here. This recording, I'll put it on SharePoint so that you guys could just click on it and view. This is my first GoToMeeting that I recorded, so I'm not sure what format it gets in, but it'll be available in SharePoint. Are there any questions on any of the topics that we covered so far, including the release notes and the other contents? All right. This is a much easier crowd than the last time. Okay. I'm putting all of you guys back on mute again, and I will go into the advisor one. All right. So the first change on the release note is we are adding now the actual database version. That's really the only change. So when you go to your version registry manager, you'll see 5 items under that instead of 4. So keep that in mind. And there will be a lot of repeats for that communication controls that we updated. For those that have no functionalities, I will just skip over it after covering it the first time. So TIPS database was updated to 8.0, added support for remote pack by layer. Again, anything that changes in Guardian, it usually trickles down to advisor at the database. So that's what that is. This was an old bug. We're able to figure it out. If a customer was using suspend and resume, which a lot of us do, at the resume lot error, this little prompt will come up that'll say SPTQ empty or get number cannot get any numbers. Once you click OK and decide to just continue the lot, it would run successfully without any error. So we had this funny, error prompt that came up right when you resume lot, but then when you actually put the IPS back into run mode, it would run fine again. We figured out what that actually was, and we've patched it so that that no longer happens. For those of you who didn't experience it before, you probably won't ever see it again anyway, so that's good. Advisor remote operator, the HTML web page, we updated to use standard communications in Windows 7 and XP. That's the only change. No functionality was actually added. This will repeat for any web pages that we have, as well as anything else that uses TCP/IP or serial controls. Right. It's going to AI server, same thing. It was updated to use work in Windows 7, no new functionality. Archive Manager. There's a very specific step in Archive Manager. If you try to create an archive using the same old name, let's say it was called Archive1, and the customer decided to create another archive called Archive1, it'll ask you, do you want to overwrite this archive? When you say yes, it'll begin to create the archive. Right during that sequence, if you click cancel, the old archive, which you've given permission to overwrite, would be gone, and the new archive you've just canceled out of it, so you would have no archives left. It's a very specific step, but and we just found this internally. We just went ahead and fixed it. No customers actually complained about it, so um, it's a low risk item. The other thing that I want to mention here, we added support so that it supports archives that are greater than 2 gigs, which raises a whole nother question. It should never be greater than 2 gigs. When you guys take an archive or get an archive from the customer for troubleshooting purposes, make sure we remove the tips his.zip file, which has all the history database stuff. Unless we're actually need to collect history data to troubleshoot something, we don't need that. We don't need to store it on our network. Even the customers, if they are backing up, they won't need it. Just make sure that they understand what that is and why they need it, if they need it at all. But for our general troubleshooting purpose, if we ever get it in-house, they could erase that his.zip file within the archive. ARM, our advanced reporting module, all the reports were updated with the new corporate logo. No other new functionalities were added. Component manager, internal to tips, no new function. DV monitor, we added a new event called new event so that the event browser, this is the EV browse within tips, will record any lost/restore connections. This kind of helps us troubleshoot odd network issues and when customers complain about either connections being unstable or they were trying to commission something and it didn't actually work. Now that we're logging this, we should be able to see right in the event log that our Guardian's connection is unstable or Advisor to Sentry connection is unstable, right? That manager, the updated to work with Windows 7, no new function was added. evic.io, just updated to work in Windows 7. Same thing with evic.io config. IPS AI item. This was an old hotfix already, so you guys probably already know about this. We're just including in this GA. Added a new property called device timeout, and then deprecated request timeout. IPS engine.exe, we added a new mode for the DDE command called suspend. Something that we should call, and I'm working with the standards group on this, but during the suspend sequence, we could call this, which makes sure that all the IPS engine processes are not in a run mode, basically. IPS format.dll, this is a big one. It's a small change, but it may affect on how we check for errors. Within format, you guys already know it understands all of Visual Basic Script functionalities, and more often than not, either by the standards team or by the PE that originally made the archive and the configuration for that format block, it'll have a syntax error, or somebody forgot a parentheses or missed a quote, use a single quote instead of a double quote, so on and so forth. Whatever that may be, if that line fails to compile, it'll give an error and it'll actually prohibit the user from starting the lot. So when you see an operation that says syntax error on XYZ format block, just know that's what that is. Revisit it and actually fix the error. I think it actually goes as far as telling you where the error was found as well. Count by layer, SPT lot info, pack by layer, all updated to work in Windows 7. No new functions added. SPT set status. This is another bug item that we fixed in a hotfix. We've added it to the general availability release. We are just making this match set number by adding new options for reject only and duplicate item to the drop-down field for detection of duplicate items and what to do with it. IPS tag trigger, no changes again, just updated for Windows 7. TCP/IP transfer, another old bug that we fixed and included in this GA release. This already has gone out as a hotfix before. There was a communication problem when you use TCP/IP between TCP/IP client block. During the start last sequence, we just fixed it so it doesn't do that anymore. IPS VIC IO vision result, as well as keyboard label reel transfer. Let's see, location track, lock control. These are all updated for Windows 7, no new functions. And let's get to the last page here. Menu Man updated to work with Windows 7. A few bugs that we also fixed. One, if and when you restore an archive and the archive manager says, hey, you restore a new archive, do you want to restart? Clicking on that restart, we had a bug. I'm not sure if some of you guys know, but this is a very old bug. Once MenuMan was restarted because of archive manager, specifically in that sequence, it actually gave you access to the start button again. We fixed that so that the hook is in the place again, and any of the system keys were disabled correctly. 2360. This is when you exit tips. It wasn't just one application, but you'll sometimes get this application is hanging, cannot close IPS engine or cannot close RTDB, continue or retry, right? Or cancel or retry. We figured out what those were, and we are now closing all the connections correctly. So you really shouldn't see any of the menu man having issues restarting or closing down from here on in. Pack by layer, again, we added support for remote focus, which also comes with a new tool called Data Matrix Grid. Palette controller just updated. Remote focus, which is the new module that we keep talking about, which supports enhanced pack by layer with auto-focusing lens. RTDB32 fixed the issue with the application not closing during the archive restore and the restart sequence. SPT reorg operations, no new changes. Keyboard filter, this is just the module that we have to hook all the system keys, nothing new there. Tips remote, result timeout error, same exact thing as the menu man items. Another app that was staying online, we're just making sure that it closes on a restart. Transfer shipment, no new functionality. TVGI, no new functionality, just added support for remote focus. Version registry manager, same exact thing. It was not closing correctly. We're closing it now so that we may not, you'll not get a version registry manager hanging at the exit of tips. VizDev updated to work with Windows 7, no new changes there. And the last thing, which we have a brand new technical guide for, you guys can look at it. It's published in the publications drive. It's a new vision tool designed specifically to work with pack by layer operations. In this instance, it's designed to work with remote focus. From here on in, all the remote focusing efforts, including QR tool and 1D barcode, chances are it'll get its own vision tool that runs optimized for grid modes. So keep that in mind. Viz QR tool, this is old. Most of you guys already used it, but it was never officially released, so it's in here now. And last one is X for SPTIs. This is the notification resending tool in Advisor. Again, no changes there. All right, I think that's everything. I've unmuted everybody.
So I just walked up and down each and every aisle, knocking on doors.
All right, I'm opened up for questions. You guys are unmuted. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I don't know whether you jumped on that call. You've done this one before. So
Version log.
I've just.
Fixed it.
Go ahead.
Just sent you a text.
Did they fix the version log so that DDP shows the full screen and not just the full? I believe that's correct. So Bob P's question was, when you go to the version registry manager, it used to cut off where the driver pack only showed the first digit and not the second.
It's actually in a text file in the archive.
Yeah, let me look at that right now. I know we definitely looked at it. I'm actually checking it now. Are there any other questions?
I have an archive question.
Go ahead.
You were mentioning about archive support now being larger than 2 gig, and that we don't actually, we don't want to store anything that large because we're moving the industry out of there. Did you? I just want to make sure I understand correctly. You're saying that you want customers to do that as well?
No. If the customers are already backing up, what we've seen is customers keep on backing up, and they also keep all the old archives.
Sure.
And they keep that in the C drive. So, I see.
It chews up a huge amount of space.
Yeah.
My concern with me is are we, if we're telling customers they should really get rid of this so that it does reduce that space, are we giving them steps to do that? I hate to say it, but working with people for a lot of years, a lot of people can barely make an archive, let alone going in and going into a zip file and removing pieces of it.
This is when they send it to us, so that it doesn't waste their time trying to.
Okay, so you're not recommending that they do this?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Bob, I'm just installing driver pack on my system to see if that thing shows up.
That's fine, James.
Are there any other questions on the line? By the way, for any PEs, NFEs, and maybe CCTS2, there will be a new virtual machines image, which has Windows 7 embedded running on it. So it should be, basically a clone of what you would see on an IPC. So just keep that in mind. It seems like our MSDN license from Microsoft will allow PE stores to use it as a tester, which opens up, enough doors for PEs to run and do archives right on their system. All right. Driver pack. Yep, there we go. So if you look, here's the new driver pack, and it's no longer truncated.
Well, thank you.
All right. All right. Well, if nobody else has any questions, you guys get your half an hour back. I'll take this recording and I will put it up on SharePoint. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, James.
All right. Take care.